Hello and welcome to this latest edition of Franchise Sports Talks Football. I'm your host, as always, Alen Ramic, joined with my co-host, as always, Luke Conboy. Luke, how are you, my friend?
Yeah, very well, Alan, very well. Well, week 9 it is, isn't it, on the horizon? So, season
Exciting.
Just on plowing.
We're loving it. We're loving it over here.
Indeed. So, yeah, 49's Packers for Thursday night football. Somehow the game's going ahead despite COVID ravaging both teams, really, at the moment. That's the time of recording. 49ers just the one healthy receiver on the roster. So
Gotta love it.
we'll see how that game goes.
Sorry, that was a bit of Seattle homerism coming out there.
Already, I haven't been recording a minute and it's already coming out.
But yeah, we were expecting to talk about a relatively busy trade deadline, and what, 2 moves happened? It was great.
Felt like it, didn't it? I think there was a 5th round pick was the biggest thing I think that changed hands was the Avery Williamson trade from the Jets to the Steelers. Pick Jets get a 2022 5th round pick, so about as high profile as it got. But there's also one quite interesting one I thought was the obviously he went for the absolutely peanuts, but it was Isaiah Ford, wide receiver, went from Dolphins to the Patriots, so a sort of intra-division trade there. But I think the Pats gave a conditional 2022 7th round pick, which is ultimately going to mean nothing, depending what those conditions are. I guess it would just mean that if Ford is still on the roster by 2022. But with the way the Pats are looking at the moment, you wouldn't actually be too surprised. Obviously, at the moment, you see N'Keal Harry's probably WR1 with Edelman on IR currently. So the Pats going to hope he's back in freaks. But obviously now they've got Ford and N'Keal Harry to stay. But behind that, you got like Demir Bird, Gunnar Olszewski, and Jacoby Myers. Like, it's not really going to cut it, is it? So
a Hall of Fame of wide receivers there.
So to see how it goes for the Pats, but obviously 2-5, it's going to be 2020 NFL season be remembered for a lot of things, but the fact that there'll be no New England Patriots in the playoffs by the looks of it, unless things turn around drastically.
Let's not tempt fate. This is Bill Belichick we're talking about.
Very true. I won't say that the goose is cooked yet, but we'll see.
We're going to touch on DK Metcalf later in the podcast, but imagine swapping out N'Keal Harry for DK Metcalf, just how much better that whole offense would look. But their loss and the loss of like every other team that drafted a wide receiver in that draft is our gain. Seattle homerism.
So, yeah. We'll definitely be plugging that one.
Yes, but like obviously that Isaiah Ford, and Avery Williamson, the only 2 moves that happened alongside the 49ers cutting Dante Pettis when they have no active wide receivers, which like tells me that like, wow, Dante Pettis, like what did you do? Like,
You say if you can't even get on, can't get reps on the team, let's just say at the top of show. Only one active receiver, then he must be something seriously amiss there. So have to see if any other teams take a chance on him. But if San Fran see no place for him, then most teams must be thinking they must know something that we don't. So tough times for if it don't take place.
He signed for the Giants. He signed for the Giants.
Oh God, best of luck to him.
But that's like, I think that's the biggest punishment someone can get right now, signing for the Giants.
I mean, if you sign for any, even New York-based franchise,
I'm sorry.
Adam Gase is coach of the Giants. Just
I wasn't going to mention it, but yeah. Why do you think it was such a dud? Like, I thought I didn't expect any big star names to be traded, like huge star names. But I still expected like a lot of move around the edges to happen just because of COVID, like you mentioned earlier, because of injuries that have happened. I expected more move to happen, and nothing happened. It was quite truly probably the worst trade deadline ever.
Yeah, I suppose it just suggests that a lot of the obviously the you kind of feel like Super Bowl playoff contenders are generally the buyers at this time of year, and it probably suggests that they're quite happy with where they are at the moment. I think no, there was talk of the Packers were after Will Fuller. Texans wanted the second round pick, which is I think completely fair enough. Packers weren't willing to give up more than the fourth, so that's got deadlock there. But yeah, perhaps it's potentially COVID thing around August. Nobody touched on the previous episode. The fact that when players are traded or they're signed off the street, they have to go through some COVID protocol. They have to pass something like 8 tests in 7 days.
Gotta love it.
The active roster. So that's why we didn't see Dunlap playing for the Seattle. We just gone and everything. So what if that played into teams' thoughts that if they make a move for a player, they're going to have him for one less game than they would under normal circumstances. You think, only one game shouldn't make that much of a difference, but if teams are giving up, first or second round picks or whatever, then they're obviously going to want to get the maximum out of that player, because obviously the primary reason why they would have given up that draft capital to get a player was to try and win in 2020. So I think you could probably definitely point to those two matters. Just the fact that there's always these names floating around. I think people just trying to sort of create rumors, and which people think, the Texans, they've got to be sellers because they're 1-5 and missing a first and second round pick. But I think the team itself, and the Texans, for example, ownership have come out and said, we still think we can sneak a playoff place for 2020, which is great to think.
Optimistic.
Exactly. It was one extra playoff place and all that, and the fact that there are a number of teams that are really struggling, so you can see potentially an 8-8 team making it, or 7-9 in an extreme case. But I think it's a team. I think JJ Watt summed up saying he doesn't really want to be part of a rebuild, and the fact that his name was also floating around in trading circles, but he's still part of it. But I suppose it's not so much a rebuild. I think in Houston's case, it's more like a restructuring. So obviously they've got the franchise quarterback, so there is number 4. But I think we'll see what comes of it. But you say very quiet deadline. I think there's another one to mention as well. I think the Texans were sellers in one case. It didn't get much attention. It was Eli Anku, I think defensive tackle. I think it was, but essentially Texans played him off waivers just very recently, and he was flipped to the Cowboys for a 2022 7th round pick. But it's just also doesn't probably generate much talk in normal circumstances. The fact that Texans actually done quite well in the trade, despite only getting very minimal capital, but the fact that they actually managed to flip a guy for that 7th round pick from some guy just off the street a couple weeks ago. So perhaps a signal of a changing of the tide there. But as you say, guys like Will Fuller, Haskins, Golden Tate, Evan Engram, all these names that were mentioned in rumor circles are going to stay on the teams for the rest of 2020.
And I think precisely, I think it works both ways. Like, people weren't willing to give up first or second round picks, but we saw the Packers not even want to give up a 3rd round pick for a Will Fuller, which I think would have been, justifiable compensation, or even a 2nd round pick, a late second, I think is, which would be an early 3rd round pick for some other teams. I think that would be, justifiable compensation to bolster Aaron Rodgers, because we've seen Aaron Rodgers without Aaron Jones. It's not pretty. The Vikings beat him. Nothing against the Vikings. They're not great this year. But I think that was another big thing. People didn't want to give up a lot this trade deadline. You even see Seattle, what they gave up BJ Finney, for Carlos Dunlap. That's a trade you do 10 times out of 10 if you're Seattle. You don't even think about it. Everson Griffin, a 6th round pick. It's nothing. It for players of that caliber, it is nothing. It really is. You're not going to get a player like that in the 6th, or you might use getting incredibly lucky, like a Cam Chancellor type, or a Richard Sherman, or a George Kittle. It pains me to say. Get well better George Kittle, by the way. One of my favorite players in the NFL. Let's hope he's not out too long.
Yeah. He reckons 2 weeks. The doctors have said 8 weeks.
So he'll be back next week. He'll be suiting up. He'll show his like Steve Austin tattoo or something, and you
Well,
just hear
the 49 are going to need it. It's the fact they've only got one active receiver at the moment. So
and zero quarterbacks.
yeah, more of that
But
to
we'll
come.
get onto that later. But
Teaser.
yeah, I think there's not much to talk about with the trade deadline apart from it was a dud. So,
Yep.
but to be honest with you, we're on week 9. I think the MVP conversation has shaped its head very nicely. I think there's one main contender and a bunch of contenders after him, but I don't want to say it because I don't want to be accused of being a homer. But it's Russell Wilson.
So yeah, just just past the halfway stage, aren't we now? Front runners are making themselves known. You can probably sort of looking at the betting markets, that kind of thing. You kind of see it's kind of like a top 5 seems to be emerging. But you wouldn't have thought like, but Tom Brady seems to have made himself onto this list. And you look at Kyler Murray, and then obviously the usual suspects of Aaron Rodgers, Patrick Mahomes, and some guy called Russell Wilson. But
we've never talked about him, have we?
Not at all. But it does seem like it's the MVP is Wilson's to lose now. Really, like the way he's been playing is unbelievable, and the fact that he may now eventually get that MVP award that he so deserves. The fact that it hasn't been christened.
A vote. You might get a vote. Let's start with that vote first.
Exactly. So the year of 2020 is a year of a lot of firsts and a very weird and wonderful year and everything. So the fact that you could see a Wilson MVP season just to top it all off as well. So
I think the only guy who can challenge Russ this year for an MVP is Tom Brady because of narrative.
Yep.
But even so, I mean, like the fact that Russell Wilson's having like 4 touchdown days and people just going, yeah, that's just Russell Wilson being Russ. I'm like, that's not a normal thing, like, right? Like, if he averages 4 TDs for the season, he's on 64.
Yeah. But it's an astounding thing. But the way that this after season's going, a lot of you feel like, okay, well, they're going to be NFC contenders. So I think when you look at NFC, Rodgers is obviously his number one, I'd say, target. Obviously, there's talk about Brady and so on and so forth. I think but ultimately, as a team, the Packers are better than the Bucks. So
I agree.
It'd just be if we can see Russell Wilson versus Aaron Rodgers, the 2 front runners in my eyes for the MVP, going for it in the NFC Championship, then we're going to be in for a treat.
Well, I'd personally love to play someone like the Lions because it would take a lot of stress out of my life. but again, Seattle homer there. As a neutral, I think having a Wilson Rodgers NFC Championship game, which is the 2 best quarterbacks in the NFC, not named Dak Prescott. Get well soon, Dak. I'm still high on the Dak train. But it's Russell Wilson has been this good for years. Like, I don't think that's a surprise to you. It's not a surprise to me. I've long been saying, and this, people were calling me crazy last year when I called Russ the best quarterback in the NFL. It's the system that's held him back, and we've seen it. Like, you let him throw the ball 30 plus times a game. Seattle aren't going to magically lose because they don't run. They're going to win games. And they're going to win games they shouldn't win because you know why? You have number 3 in the backfield, and the Seahawks at 6-1. I can make an argument without Russell Wilson. They're 0-7. Like, they're not I love DK Metcalf. We'll get onto DK Metcalf later. Like we said earlier, I love Tyler Lockett, but you just replace, I don't know, Russell Wilson with Drew Brees. This team is 2-5.
Yeah, exactly.
2-5 they are. You replace this. Even Aaron Rodgers, you put in this situation, they're 3-4. Like, they're 3-4, 4-3. They're battling for like a wild card spot. And with saying all that, I know you said you were going to be a little bit of a devil's advocate, but I just don't see at this point in the season how you could give it to someone who's not named Russell Wilson.
Yeah, so I was sort of thinking during the week, and we sort of planning the show and everything like that. I was going, right, let's get a bit of MVP juices flowing. But the more I was like looking into it and thinking, like, how can I make this argument that it's take the field or take Russell Wilson? But I think now we've reached the stage, we say week 9, it's going to take some cliff for Wilson to fall off. And then that's got to be accompanied by either you said like a Rodgers or a Mahomes, just like seriously taken off from their already like high level that they're playing at. So it's as we mentioned at the top of the topic there, that it's Russell's to lose, isn't it? This award. So like, as you say, like, you know, you've got to think like what makes an MVP? Like, he's the guy that completely turns a team around. You say if it was like Breeze or you know, say even Rodgers, like leading his offense, would Seattle be still on the same record? And the answer is probably no, like almost definitely in Breeze's case. So I think that's when you got to look at MVP and think, right, this guy is completely changing the team. Like, he's not, you know, obviously he's the most important player on that team by far. Take him out of the equation. If he goes down with injury, it's like Geno Smith still backing up Seattle? But
indeed, gotta love Geno.
If they send him trotting out, or if they sign a guy off the street, but yeah, I mean, Russell Wilson should be the MVP. It'll take a huge, you know, turn of events now for him. You know, perhaps, you know, touching wood, the only thing that's going to deny him is possible injury. And how many games has Wilson been through injury?
Goose egg.
Exactly. So,
but yeah,
I was going to try and be this devil's advocate and try and say, well, you know, look at Rodgers, look at Mahomes, but it's so hard. Like, I don't want to, you know, I want to give guys credit when it's due, and you know, Wilson is that guy. You know, Wilson's having the kind of season that I wished Deshaun Watson would have, to be honest. As you say, is wearing his Clemson jersey with number 4.
Well, yeah, I just want to throw some Russell Wilson stats out there. He's throwing it about 28 times a game. His passing completion is 71.5%, which is absurd. 2,151 yards already. It's not the highest in the league, but, you know, the Seahawks offense, I think, has been very efficient at times, where they haven't lost the ball much. He's only got 4 interceptions as well. And, yeah, he's thrown it 256 times, which is even more impressive. Like, his passing rating is at 120.7. His PFF grade is at 95.3. And if you're asking whether there's been a higher PFF grade for a quarterback in a season so far, there has not.
I mean, that just says it all, doesn't it? So the fact that this guy could be denied MVP is just like, well, just listen to all this. Like,
what's the point of having? It's like, I know some of our listeners will watch the NBA and stuff. It's there, like, it'll be like denying LeBron an MVP in his prime, and it's just like, why? Like, it's so obvious that he's the MVP. Like, just give it to him. Like, do you know what I mean?
Stop looking for reasons to deny the guy. No.
Exactly. And I think it's the narrative behind it. It's always been something else for Russell Wilson. It's always been, oh, you got the Legion of Boom, oh, you got Marshawn Lynch, oh, you got this, you got that. No, it's Russell Wilson. The Seahawks will have been at 9-17 without Russell Wilson. It doesn't matter how good that defense is. Do you know what I mean? And that's the biggest annoyance for me as a Seahawks fan, is he doesn't get the credit he deserves ever for being, in my opinion, one of the all-time greats at the position. I really like. I don't even think that's like a hot take comment to make. When it's all said and done, Russell Wilson will be a top 10 quarterback of all time.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, he's got the durability, he's got the talent, he's got everything going for him. The fact, there's always talk. If he's never got an MVP, and then there was talk around that, and you always think, well, even let's talk about Hall of Fame with this guy. But again, like the talk around it sometimes just so it's minuscule comparison to guys like guys who've been around maybe 1 or 2 seasons more, or in some cases the same amount of seasons that Russell's played, and think, okay, well, this guy's a shoe-in, Hall of Famer and everything. But Wilson will be there. People will look back, in 10, 15 years time thinking like, wow, like that guy was unbelievable what he was doing. Like, it's so hard to imagine Seahawks without him now, to be honest.
It'll be a sad day when he retires. Like, don't get me welling up already. He's still in his prime, Luke, thankfully.
Exactly. I'm not talking a guy into retire. You hope that the fact that he's been so obviously he works on his body and everything like that, and obviously he's had perhaps a bit of luck on his side or whatever that, or he's always known when to protect himself and everything, and take the hits but don't take them too hard, like knowing when the play is over and everything. So in fact he's doing everything right in that regard, and he is helping himself to prolong his NFL career. And like you see like guys like Brady, Rodgers, Breeze, maybe not so much, but the guys that they can still play at such an elite level in like the proper twilight of their career. Even Wilson is definitely going to be one of those guys still playing at this kind of level, or perhaps even there's another level to his game that we haven't even seen. We'll see, but but yeah, let's say Russell Wilson, he is here to stay. He is the 2020 MVP, and he's got the weapons around him for this year to make that Super Bowl run.
Well, that was a beautiful segue onto our next
topic.
Am I insane in thinking DK Metcalf is already a superstar? Like, my hot take is DK Metcalf's a top 10 receiver in the NFL.
Top 10.
I wanted you can't touch him because he's too strong for you. He's too quick. He's a really good pass catcher. The only blemish he really had out of Ole Miss is he dropped a ton of easy passes. He doesn't do that anymore.
No.
And he has Russell Wilson throwing him the ball.
I think honestly, what really helps Metcalf's case is that you got Tyler Lockett on the other side of the field as well. So.
It's like Jeff Schlereth, who is not a good commentator by any means necessary, and Chris Myers. I think that was the worst commentary team I have ever heard on Fox Sports. Where's Adam Amin when I need him in my life? He's been great this year, but I say all that. They kept on saying, double DK. I'm like, yeah, so you can let Lockett go for 300 yards? Like,
it's such a case of like opposing teams. It's like, it's pick your points and stuff, isn't it? Amount of times you've seen either Lockett or Metcalf go off. It's because, you pretty look at the stats, look at the box score and everything. But, one of these guys has been shot up, another one, say, has gone for 100 plus yards, multiple TDs. And it's fact, obviously you can't double both of these guys.
No.
You're gonna have to, be smart with your defense. Try, confuse matters, give some, different looks here and then. But the fact that you got, as we keep talking about, Wilson is guy throwing the ball, so he's gonna read defenses so well. He's gonna know who to throw to, when to throw it, and everything. So, but you say I think DK is a fantastic receiver, and I think he's such a beneficiary of that system. In fact, he quietly had an amazing year last year as well.
Yeah, he was also in his rookie year. He was really, really good.
You say there was a lot of talk coming out the draft when the Seahawks picked him. This guy, he's got butter on his gloves or something like that. You can't hold on to the ball. And obviously those concerns were legit.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why he did kind of fall in the draft. Was it round 64?
64th, yeah.
So obviously he did fall, but obviously the talent was there. So the Seattle, they couldn't pass on a guy like him. And Seattle, he always strike as one of the better managed teams, from the top down in the league. The fact that they potentially Antonio Brown was a landing spot there, and they did their due diligence and said no, which comes as no real surprise, really. To be honest, as a if you really look into what Brown's rather heinous acts that he's caught, so the fact he's in the league is astounding. But that's another conversation.
Josh Gordon is not. Roger Goodell, what are you doing with your life? You horrible human being.
Exactly.
Josh Gordon smoked some weed and he's not allowed to play football anymore. It's a substance that isn't even banned anymore. They don't test for it. Why is he still banned? Reinstate Josh Gordon. It would be a case for me, even if he wasn't playing for the Seahawks. It's a joke. You cannot permanently ban someone from the NFL. You are not a dictator. And if you are a dictator, ban Adam Gase from the sport.
Exactly. You use your power for something good.
Exactly. Don't ban a guy who just wants to smoke a spliff every now and then.
Yeah, it's cycling back to Metcalf. But think top 10. I don't know. I don't know if I can bring myself to say he is top 10. I have to try and work on a list and come back to you on that one. But it'd be interesting to see him play like a full game without Lockett, or try and if Metcalf was on another team with a quarterback like I don't know,
Daniel Jones,
like a Daniel Jones, yeah, I was gonna say, or even someone like a mid-tier kind of,
a
like
Kirk Cousins type, or
yeah, exactly, someone like that. You think, okay, well, I think he'd still be good, but you wouldn't see the crazy, 100+ yards and multiple TD games that he is having, but he's on pace to have an incredible year, and he's
already on 680 receiving yards.
Exactly, 7 TDs. So he's averaging, so that's a touchdown a game, isn't it? So, he is just one cog in this. I don't want to it sounds like I'm kind of really talking this guy down, but in fact, he's amazing. I was going to say he's one cog in the system, but there's a bright, shiny cogs. It's him. It's Lockett.
It's like saying which. It's like saying which of these cars would you rather have, a Ferrari, a Lamborghini, or I don't know, like a Tesla or something. Like it's 3 different amazing cars.
Have one of these.
Yeah, like it's not. I understand where you're coming from, because like you even look at like Tyler Lockett's stats, and he's on 575 receiving yards for 7 TDs as well. David Moore's been awesome, but I tried to sit down and be like 10 guys who are definitively better than DK. I couldn't do it. Like I legitimately couldn't. It was like Stephon Diggs, DeAndre Hopkins, Odell Beckham before he got injured, because I just think the Browns are misusing Odell. And then
Adams, I think I've got put in there.
Devontae Adams. And then after that, you're like struggling for like guys that you can. Mike Evans, I'd put ahead of him as well right now, just because I think Mike Evans has got some experience on his side as well. He's not old. He's been beautifully in his prime, but he's got experience. He's been playing in the NFL so long. He reads it beautifully. And after like those 5-6 names, you're like, yeah, like you could like put Tyler Lockett ahead of him, but like Tyler Lockett's like the most criminally underrated player in the NFL. Like,
no, I think that really then like sort of begs the question, like, say you're building like a fancy roster and you had the choice between Lockett and Metcalf, who'd you take? Like
me personally,
these 2 guys, like,
are you trying to like get me to like die on air here, Luke?
Like choosing your favorite child time, isn't it? Like, you
can only choose Chris Carson over both of them. got to pound the ball according to Mark Schlereth. You got to pound it. You can't win in the NFL by throwing the football. Gotta love Mark Schlereth. Going into week 9, obviously there are some intriguing matchups. What games stand out for you?
Look, I think, well, straight off the bat, Thursday Night Football, I think, is going to be a really interesting one. You're going to see, as you touched on, this, decimated 49ers offense, already missing Garoppolo. Well, how much of a loss is he really? But the fact he's started most of their games is, the team's going to take, a quarter or 2 to kind of really, get into gear a little bit. And the fact, we'll see what comes with the Packers. Hope they're going to need Aaron Jones, but I think he's still questionable at the moment. So the fact they've missing Jamal Williams because of COVID. So at the moment, without Jones, you're going to have Tyler Irvin and Dexter Williams leading that backfield. So obviously 2 guys with not a lot of NFL snaps.
It could be like a 6-6 game.
That's literally what I was thinking. The fact that all, the 49ers, they'll just have to, get double coverage on Devontae Adams all game, try and bring the pressure to Rodgers, and then that would kind of, really nullify them. So we'll see how that one goes. I don't know.
The Cards Dolphins. That's my game of the week. Kyler against Tua. Give me that all day long.
Great shout.
Oh,
it's going to be the game. Oh, it's got Bill. I don't know. Yeah, we'll touch with Bills
Seahawks.
We've given Wilson all the talk he needs for one pod, but that's going to be a great game again.
Josh Allen, Ravens, another one.
I think Josh Allen, he's kind of touched. He had such a explosive start to the year. Last 2 or 3 games, he's kind of really fallen on the way a little bit, and I think the Seahawks defense looked good last week. So
yeah, if you ignore the yards in the fourth quarter, which we touched on before we started recording, and Rob Ryan, who's been on Sky Sports the past few weeks, who I think sounds a lot more coherent and is not as crazy as Brother Rex on like ESPN and stuff, which helps a lot. He said, yeah, like you need to like ignore all these like total yards for the Seahawks defense. Like all these yards coming like garbage time where they're not trying anymore. Like no one cares. And they're like,
the time comes, that's when you roll out, you kind of like your rookies or you kind of like fringe players, like just or
even like I'm sorry, but like Bobby Wagner, who has been awesome, like he's been legitimately brilliant this season again. KJ Wright's been brilliant. These guys are on the wrong side of 30. Are you telling me they're going to concentrate fully in a game that they're blowing out the 49ers by like 28 points? Of course not.
Second, the coach is going to pull them up. They're going to save their bodies. They're going to prepare them for the game next week. So you can't really,
It's not a playoff game. Like, exactly. I think you'd see a different, I think, especially with Jamal Adams coming back, I'm very, very excited for that. Yeah. DJ Reed looked like a really good nickel for the Seahawks again. I'm really excited about. I think everything's starting to click for Seattle. I think Green Bay are going to be awesome as well. Hopefully, Aaron Rodgers like picks himself up out of this rut that he's in. Just before we do sign off for the main show, I want to touch on one thing that I'm going to spring on you because I've just looked at the schedule on that and I realized we haven't talked about the Ravens yet. Lamar Jackson, like,
yeah,
what's happening? I'm not saying he's not elite. He's a top 5 quarterback, like, even this year. I don't know what it is, though. And you know me, I'm a huge Lamar fan. I was banging on Lamar's drum when he was coming out the draft, how he should have been the number 1 overall pick, and it was a joke that he was not. I was proven right, so I'm very happy about that. Draft prognosticators, if you want to hire me, I'm available. But, yeah, like, what's happening with Lamar, man? He looks like a guy devoid of confidence at the moment.
I think he's just part. I think it's not just Lamar. I think it's unfair to put it all on him to say.
It's not, but he just looks down.
Exactly. I think there's something amiss with like this Ravens offense. Like they don't have this kind of juice. Like they're not like pumping like they were, in 2019. Obviously the massive identity was the run game. Like it was Ingram was always cooking. The fact that they've missed him now, and then we finally J.K. Dobbins was unshackled in the previous game, over 100 yards. So I think
he looked good. He looked really good.
Yeah, no, and I'm not surprised. I told you, man. I think he was my favorite running back coming out the draft, and I think he's landed in a great spot. And I always thought like 2021 was going to be the year of Dobbins. Like Ingram could still lead the team for another year, and then he'd finally sort of make way. But I think kind of hoping that if Dobbins can get the legs pumping, he can really help this whole offense, kind of rediscover its 2019 form. Because it's funny, like some teams sort of rely so much on a run game to get going, like more than others. And I think Ravens are probably one of the biggest in the league. The fact if they can't run the ball effectively, then there's going to be a lot of Lamar scrambling and everything like that. But I think teams now know, I think they've got enough tape on this guy to know when he is going to keep the ball himself and try and run for it. In fact, like they can, you see the game's got the Steelers, they sort of fairly held him in check quite well. So I think teams are starting to figure it out, Ravens a little bit as well, I think. So the fact that they've, kind of adapt their game a little bit more. So I think there's definitely more to come from them. They definitely have their struggles, but the fact they're still winning games, they're still one of the better teams in the league. They're still very much in playoff and playoff contention for sure. But they can still, if they can get on the run, they can perhaps win playoff games. It's probably going to be against the Steelers and the Chiefs. That they're going to have to take one of these guys down to get to the Super Bowl. So the fact they've lost to both these teams now in the regular season, they're going to have to find something different to get to the big game.
I'd argue with you. They've not just lost; they've lost in decisive fashion in both games. Like I've watched both games and I come out of it thinking, I don't see Baltimore beating either of these teams. I've got a spicy take for you. Wherever there's a Brown, there's dissent somewhere. Like, I don't know what it is. Like, Hollywood's like throwing digs out there and stuff, and like, he's not good enough to throw digs out. I'm sorry, you've not proven it in the NFL. Like, you know, you were great at Oklahoma, but you've not been great in the NFL yet. Like, if you've been on like DK Metcalf levels or AJ Brown levels or someone like that out of your draft class, I'd understand. But you haven't been. Like, you know, like there's a rookie in the division in Chase Claypool who's outplayed you. Like, you shouldn't be talking. Like, you know,
it's just a huge sense of frustration, I guess, on this side of things. I think, you know, obviously as most receivers, and they probably think that they should be getting the ball a lot more, which, you know, you can't, you know, you kind of understand from his part, because the fact that Ravens perhaps don't throw as much as a, you know, typical NFL team. So I think that's probably where a lot of this talk with Kirk from. He's probably thinking he can play a lot better than he can. But I should say he's still he's young, you know, he's fairly still relatively new in the league. So it's kind of, you want him to kind of prove it before he starts, you know,
sprouting garbage about the MVP, basically. Political views aside of Lamar Jackson, you know, I really don't agree with his political choices, but hey ho, such is life. But yeah, so let's just wrap it up. Your game to watch this week is
drum roll. It's gonna be Monday night Jets. No, I'm joking. It will not be Monday Night Football.
3-5 Patriots. It will be after Monday.
So I think what might be a sneaky great game to watch is Chargers Raiders. The Raiders are really, like, you know, a nice sort of.
They're good.
But
the Raiders are good.
Late Justin Herbert is making the Chargers watchable again. So I'll definitely have an eye on that game, as well as, you know, I'm going to have an eye on Texans Jaguars as well for personal reasons.
Sorry.
But I say there's some tasty games, as we mentioned, Bills Seahawks. But there's also games like, there's going to be a blowout, or that's going to be a 6-6er that we might get on 49ers Packers tonight. But you've got Washington Giants then, and you've got Cowboys and Steelers, which I think Steelers are going to win by about 85 points. But we'll see. You know, we can't have, you know, 16 perfect games all the time, can we? So
no. Unfortunately not. Mine's the Dolphins cards. Yeah, I love Tua. I love Kyler, even though he plays for Arizona, and I hope he loses every game. Still love him though. Yeah. Thanks, Luke, for joining me on this main part. Where can the people find you and your great work?
Twitter, Instagram at Conboy NFL, franchisesports.co.uk/NFL, and of course on the YouTube, just give it a search, Franchise Sports Talk Football, where we'll bring our lovely video show to you guys.
Thanks for listening, guys, and hope you join us for the next bonus part. And welcome back to people who either switched just over to YouTube or have continued to watch. So me and Luke, you know, we gave a little bit of a foreshadowing thing earlier about Garoppolo and whatnot. We were looking, our main topic for today, for this topic, barring Fire Adam Gase, one more time, Fire Adam Gase.
Indeed.
Apart from that, got that little rant over. We've been looking at teams that we believe need or should be looking for quarterbacks in the upcoming off season of 2021. We'll give 2 or 3 teams each, and that'll basically be the brunt of it. There really hasn't been much to talk about in the NFL this week, which is rare. Like, you know, apart from like recapping games from last week, there's not been much, has there?
No, like, it's normally quite a very busy time of year with the trade deadline and everything. Obviously,
precisely.
Probably the election over in the US has probably overshadowed kind of everything coming out of that country at the moment. But as you say, I think it's getting to that time of year now where we start to turn our attention to 2021. Obviously, some teams now that aren't mathematically out of playoff contention, but, you know, for sure they're not going to be, you know, relevant for much longer in 2020. So it's, you know, I think the obvious 2 As you say, if you look at the quarterback position in depth here, it's the New York Jets and the Jaguars, isn't it? The Jags have made it pretty clear. I think they're tanking. The fact that they were going along all right. Obviously, the results weren't really going their way with Minshew at quarterback, but I think there was still a path forward where Minshew could still be, the signal caller, and then they could add a few more pieces on offense and everything. But the fact that Minshew all of a sudden appears on the injury report, and despite Jags being on the bye, they just go and rule them out straight away. You think, okay, well, give the guy a chance. But the fact that the way that there's like a hand injury, and the fact that it just kind of sounds like, as we touched on the previous show, it kind of seems like someone's taken a hammer to Minshew's fingers as he's been sleeping or something. But like you say, I think the Jags definitely going to be, in this Trevor Lawrence, Justin Fields talk. The Jets, as we've known, well, dare I say it, since about week 2, to be honest, but they're going to probably going to be looking at quarterback. Obviously, Darnold's not really done.
It's not his fault.
But he's just he's going to be the scapegoat, I think, for just the failings of this franchise. And the fact that Joe Douglas, Jets GM, says that he reckons Gase is going to be part of the solution. Like, I don't know, like how maybe take those comments a little bit of a pinch of salt, but the fact that he's used words that strong suggests that he potentially is in favour of Gase, dare I say, sticking around beyond the 2020 season, which will just bring joy to myself and Alen here. But
Joe Douglas deserves to be fired if that happens.
Exactly. But Jets and Jags, they've still got quarterbacks on the contracts, but there are a couple of teams out there who aren't really they don't actually have quarterbacks on the roster under contract for 2021. Obviously, Colts being one of them, with Brissett and Rivers. And the bigger one, of course, is the Dallas Cowboys with Andy Dalton. At the moment, he signed that 1-year veteran deal, and Dak Prescott.
1 second, you're telling me that Ben DiNucci is not the future? Whoa.
I think he's already been dropped by the sounds of it. I think the Cowboys brought in a couple of guys for this week to try out. So
was any of them Colin Kaepernick?
What do you think?
Oh my goodness. I have to watch Ben DiNucci play on a Monday night or Sunday night, sorry, because Colin Kaepernick's blackball from the NFL. It's a joke. It really is.
I think the guys they brought in, it's I think Cooper Rush. I think he was off the practice squad, and who's the other guy's name? It's somebody you wouldn't think, oh yeah, that guy. He's a starting quarterback in this league. But so the Seahawks. Talk about the Seahawks so much. The Cowboys are definitely going to be. Well, the Cowboys should re-sign Dak, but
they won't.
The opportunities they had to do that, they completely botched it, and you wouldn't be at all surprised to see Dak on the Colts, for example, for 2021. The fact that they could easily move on from both Brissett and Rivers, so that would plug certainly one hole in the quarterback merry-go-round for 2021. You also look at the Bears as well. Obviously, Trubisky's option wasn't picked up, so he's a new free agent. Is Nick Foles really the answer there? You can know the Bears, they're going to be looking at a quarterback. And then one that really kind of sticks out, I think, for me as well is obviously Jameis Winston out of contract on the Saints.
They should re-sign him and play him.
Yeah, what the Saints do with Drew Brees, though, is the ultimate thing. The fact that there was talk that 2019 might have been Brees' final season, but I think there's just so much in this organization that they want to get Brees back in the Super Bowl. We're going to do everything we can whilst Brees is the quarterback. We're just going to throw all the money at it and see what we get. But the fact you probably haven't really seen enough from the Saints to think, okay, well, they're Super Bowl winners. The fact that teams like the Seahawks and the Packers, stiff competition from the Bucs in their division as well. So I think you kind of feel like the Saints are going to fall short there a little bit, but we'll see. And obviously another, I think lastly, free agent for 2021 is Cam Newton as well. So what the Patriots going to do? At least have they seen enough from Newton to think, okay, well, if you give this guy receivers, don't rely on guys
and
like.
Hope he doesn't get COVID.
Exactly, yeah, because that's the correlation between the fall of Newton's play, him contracting COVID-19 is startling. So you kind of think perhaps something's still not quite right there. Probably he's not quite up to full health. So you kind of hope that the guy does get over the worst of it, because clearly at the moment he's still affecting his body in some way. Because we saw at the beginning of the year, before he contracted the virus, he was still starting caliber NFL quarterback, and there was no question at all that he'd be in the league from 2021 and beyond. So, but now you're kind of thinking, well, is there something going on there that we don't necessarily know about? And are the Pats going to stick by him, or are they going to draft someone, or are they going to trade for another guy? We'll see. But definitely, as you said, there's teams there to watch. Patriots, Colts, Cowboys, Bears. I'd say the Saints, definitely one to keep an eye on. Perhaps I think we can even throw Washington football team into it. Clearly, they don't see a future for Haskins. Alex Smith, who knows of him? Like, he made that brief comeback to what should have been a huge standing ovation. But at the moment they're moving forward with Kyle Allen, which is sort of Ron Rivera's sort of wherever he goes.
Choice, yeah.
But Washington football team, Saints, W2 to look at, and coming in with our hot take, which we both agreed upon. We were talking pre-show. I think we were both ready. Like, I've got a huge hot take here. We both come up with the same team, but nonetheless, let's go straight to it. It's the Jimmy Garoppolo and the San Francisco 49ers. What do they do?
I know what I'd do. Play Nick Mullins for the rest of the year. You'd have a higher chance of winning, but I digress. Listen, I say that a lot in jest. Nick Mullins got yards on the Seahawks purely because it was garbage time.
Yeah.
He should have been intercepted twice. I think if the Seahawks were fully locked in, he would have been intercepted twice. But at the same time, I think they've got a real issue with Garoppolo. I really do. I think they can save 24 million by cutting him, and I think Kyle Shanahan is a good enough coach that you can give him a rookie. Let's say, I don't know, because I don't see San Francisco winning many more games this year. I think with all their injuries they've piled up now, it's ridiculous.
Yeah.
I think even with like a 6-10 record, we've seen, John Lynch, he likes to move up in the draft or, stuff like that.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be surprised to see them move up and take, I don't know, like a Trey Lance or a Justin Fields if he starts sliding, or the kid from BYU whose name I always forget. It's Wilson, isn't it?
Okay. You keep talking, I'll look it up.
That shows you how much I've paid attention to BYU football this year. Shame on me. Shame on me. But yeah, like, I don't think Trevor Lawrence will be attainable for him, because God help the NFC and the NFL if he is. But I could definitely see him taking a chance on like a Trey Lance or a Justin Fields. I don't know how you feel, and it saves them a ton of money as well.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, like you say, they would save something near 24 million if they can cut or possibly trade them. I think this is before June 1st or sort of the start of the new league year. But I think it's a shame to see. I think the injury bug is the 49ers, and Garoppolo in particular. It's the second time now. I think he's definitely going to miss more time than he did before. I think we're going to see plenty of Nick Mullins. He's looked handy, and in fact, obviously he's very much a system quarterback in that. But being a system quarterback in a Shanahan offense is
it's not a bad thing.
In fact, you kind of almost want that from a guy, unless we're talking elite quarterbacks. We're talking the Russell Wilson,
Kyler Murray, or someone like that. Yeah.
Then you kind of want that guy to be kind of what we're kind of seeing with like you say, like the Rams and Goff, for example. The Goff is kind of falling apart a little bit. We kind of saw in that year they had the run to the Super Bowl. He was like, you saw Sean McVay's mastery at work. The fact he was this quarterback whisperer, and everything was going right for Rams and Jared Goff, but obviously, there's got a bit of I think there's talk of Jared Goff as well, but the fact that Rams gave him that massive contract means that their Rams are very much stuck in the mud. So the fact that Goff is going to be quarterback in this team, and he probably shouldn't be, because the fact they, as you mentioned before, they made the Super Bowl in spite of Goff. If they had a much better,
an unbelievable team
league, then who knows? They probably could have won that Super Bowl quite easily, because that wasn't the best Pats team we've ever seen. So, the fact
you want my spicy take?
Oh, bring it.
The Eagles should move on from Carson Wentz.
Oh, ruffle some feathers there.
He's injured a lot.
Yeah.
He throws a ton of interceptions. He's not great this year. I know the dearth of offensive weapons doesn't help with that.
Yeah.
It's not the same Carson Wentz it was pre-injury. And a lot of people don't want to talk about it because he still has flashes of being that Carson Wentz. But he's nowhere near good enough to be a starter on this team and expect him to make the playoffs consistently. Saying that, the Eagles will probably make the playoffs out of that division, but they'll be like 6-9-1. It won't be like
shot down the first hurdle immediately, won't they? Well, as we touched on previous episode, I don't think they shouldn't even be in the playoffs, but no. We've had that conversation in depth. But Wentz this year, his ball security has been appalling.
Horrible.
There's like a fumble a game with that guy, or at least an interception. I think he's 12-12 on the year, touchdowns to interceptions. So, he's in that Winston school of a touchdown interception ratio, but Winston threw 30, and Wentz is going to do very well to even touch 20 at this rate. So it's kind of if it's not Wentz for Philly, then you kind of think, well, are they another team who are going to potentially looking at the draft, which is going to start looking a lot busy. I think
they got Jalen Hurts.
But yeah, exactly. They've still got him in the building, so they've obviously they've got a plan for him. Obviously, he's played a lot. They've split him out wide. He's taken a few snaps here and there. So the fact that they took Hurts in the second round, everything. So I think the organization knows that. I think the injury concerns are the biggest concern with Wentz. The fact that he seems to pick up all these little injuries here and there. Whether it's
and I think it impacts his play, though. I think you see it. I think you see it with the interceptions. I think he's playing through a lot of the times hurt, and that causes really bad decision making to occur as well.
The trouble is, like, the fact that Eagles are in this playoff contention, they really shouldn't be. They're not going to start kind of benching Wentz per se, or giving Hurts some more snaps to kind of see what they can get, because they don't want to start. The fact that they can still, it'll be even bigger shock than it was when Foles took them to the Super Bowl. The fact that if the Eagles think they can make any kind of waves in the 2020 playoffs, that they're going to have to keep rolling with Wentz, aren't they, until they are mathematically out of playoff contention, which probably won't be the case, because the fact that Cowboys, Washington football team, and the Giants are probably all three of those teams are worse at the moment. Unless if Dak would lead in the Cowboys, then the Cowboys would be taking that division by storm. But it's a tricky one. You kind of feel like Wentz is still going to be there in 2021, just because they won't have that time really to evaluate Hurts fully to think, okay, well, this guy is our quarterback moving forward. So we'll see. But you kind of hope that, because I've always been quite a big fan of Wentz, to be honest.
So have I.
But that's where it kind of leaves that a bit of a sour taste in the mouth for me, to kind of be like, okay, well, Wentz just isn't the answer in Philly. But I think the trouble is with the Eagles, they have so many issues at the moment. Again, another team's been hit by the injury bug, and then I think you've got to start looking possibly on the coaching side of things as well. Like, is Pedersen the right guy?
Doug Peterson should be fired at the end of the season.
Over in Indianapolis, making things happen, despite Rivers not being the quarterback he once was. It's a tough one. But as I said, not in at least they have options. Not like touched on with the Rams, where I think Goff isn't the answer. Because I was thinking, like, when Goff signed a massive contract, I felt like the Rams are going to put themselves in cap hell here. Because for 2021, Goff has 27 million in guarantees. 2022, it comes down a little bit, but if the Rams still, cut the ties with Goff, they'll still be left with 15.4 million in dead cap space. So the earliest sort of viable year the Rams can cut ties with Goff is something like 2023,
which is ridiculous.
Crazy, which is to think already. You think, okay, we're going to be stuck with this guy unless we can somehow flip him in a trade. But what team in their right mind is going to take this guy on the money he's
the Jets?
So yeah, 2023 they can create 23.5 million in free cap space and take only 8.6 in dead money, courtesy of overthecap.com. But you say, I think Eagles can count themselves lucky in that regard. I think, okay, well, if the injuries do pile up for Wentz or his play continues to fall, they do have options, and one of those options is in the building in the form of Jalen Hurts.
Well, touching on Jared Goff, the only reason I didn't mention the Rams is because they cannot move off from Jared Goff.
No.
Which, again, fun facts for our listeners. You know who the third highest player in the NFL this year is? Jared Goff. It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
And then, I feel sorry for Sean McVay because I feel like that wasn't a Sean McVay decision. That's Les Snead panicking because they made one Super Bowl run. Exactly. That's what it seems like to me.
It's probably thinking that, we've got this Super Bowl roster, we want to keep it intact as much as we can. Like, Goff is the answer at quarterback. But it's of course, you can't look and say the 49ers, they made the Super Bowl just last year with Garoppolo, and there's already a lot of talk surrounding, okay, well, Garoppolo is not the answer. It's the fact that these guys can have this one, great flash in the pan year, but deep down you sort of know, well, 5-6 seasons time, this guy is not going to be the right quarterback for this team, and that's what we're seeing with Garoppolo and Goff. There are going to be better options out there, albeit the team they're going to have to spend, and they're going to have to perhaps give up draft picks or a player or two, but once you hit on a franchise quarterback and you lock him in for 10 plus years, you're going to have success, unless Bill O'Brien is a general manager and he completely wastes Deshaun Watson's rookie contract. But
it's okay, Luke. Calm down.
Speaking with but with just basic competent general management, then you're going to be fine. But
well, if you could have just kept Dwayne Brown and not traded $1 million picks for Laramie Tunsil, that would have worked as well. Dwayne Brown at 35 looks like an athletic beast still. It doesn't fill you with much hope for the Texans, does it?
The fact that
I didn't want to dog on you, but
Yeah, well, I think the whole talk was that O'Brien and Dwayne Brown had this whole fallout, and obviously it was going to be the player who normally makes way in those situations. So
it shouldn't have been.
Because Dwayne Brown is relatively speaking, Dwayne Brown is a much better left tackle than Bill O'Brien was
a general manager.
Whatever
everything
he was.
Better human as well. Everyone loves Dwayne Brown.
Exactly. So if you can have, if you fall out with a guy who's generally regarded as a very genuine person, and the fact that he's a left tackle, which is a very important position, you're going to need a guy to look after your franchise quarterback in Watson. And the fact that we let Brown go, we had to bring in Tunsil by essentially giving up the farm to get him in. Now we're sat here with no first, second round picks. So, but hey, at least we've got Watson, who we know is a top 10 quarterback. So.
And you're going to watch Miami take Jamar Chase with that number 4 overall pick currently.
Yeah,
sorry, Luke.
But it's going to
round things up for today. I want to thank you for coming onto the show, Luke, as always.
Of course. Cool. I think we lost your audio there, Alen, right at the end, but But if you can't hear Alan like myself, I'll guess that leaves me to round things up. Guys, we'll see you next time. Thanks for joining us. As Alan waves, the silent Alan. But thanks for everything, guys. Thanks again for listening to us. So find us on all the social medias that you use. Like, subscribe, all the rest of it. Take care, guys. Bye bye. I'm sure Alan will help you. Oh, I think you're back.